In 1988, I was 8 years old, a Mexican-American spending the summer in Mexico. My dad had warned me since childhood that it was dangerous to be out in the fields or graveyards alone, especially at night. I grew up with a fear that magic was real and alive in Mexico, particularly out in the countryside. That night, it was dark out. No electricity, only oil lamps, and I didn't know how to work one. So I just sat on the front porch in the moonlight, listening to the bugs. They were louder than usual. And then, I heard footsteps. More than one person very close. There was no way that I could have missed them when they were further away. I looked around, beginning to panic. I didn't hear any voices or any banter, just shuffling. And it got louder and it sounded like a mob. I jumped up and ran inside, tripping a few times, psyching myself out like I was suddenly in a horror movie where every stumble meant certain death. I slammed the door shut and locked it, grabbed the fireplace poker lying next to the doorway and ran into my room. No lock on that door. My window faced the moon, lighting up the room enough for my eyes to adjust. And I stood there, poker held short like a baseball bat, staring at the door for a long time. But there was nothing, and the silence made me feel slightly at ease. I walked over to my bed, about to let myself fall into it, when I glanced at the window at the last moment. There, draped in a headscarf, peering in, was a woman. I landed on my bed with a jolt, feeling suddenly vulnerable, and my grip loosened on the poker, and she was still staring at me. Then she started showing her teeth, but she wasn't smiling. My God. Then a bearded man appeared from the other side, whispering something to her. He noticed her staring into the window, then turned and saw me, and his face changed. He bared his teeth too. What were wrong with these people? Too scared to shout, I stayed frozen. Everyone in the house was still asleep, and the man lifted his hand and started pressing against the window, inspecting it. He tapped on the glass, lightly at first, and then harder, and it looked like he was about to open it. What do I do? Holding my breath, I just waited. If he broke the window, I was done for. I felt like they were about to drag me by my ankles all the way to hell. And then, common sense kicked in. I remembered the poker. I grabbed it and ran to the window, swinging as hard as I could. And that poker smashed against the pane closest to the man, and the glass shattered. And I instinctively squeezed my eyes shut from the shards and noise. And when I opened them again, I could hear them running away. The wind was blowing through the broken window, and there were crickets outside as well. The lights flicked on in the house. My dad and uncle rushed into my room asking what I'd been doing, and then they saw the broken window. My dad flipped out, started shouting, and asked me what the hell I was thinking, and all I could say in English was, "There were people outside. They were staring at me." And his eyes immediately went wide, and he shut up. My uncle looked confused. He didn't speak English. And my dad grabbed me by the elbow and barked at my uncle to wake everyone up and get them into the kitchen. My uncle started shouting, telling everyone to hurry. And of the 10 family members, 6 ended up in the kitchen. The other 4, my dad, uncle, and 2 older cousins, went outside armed with a hunting rifle, an old service revolver, and a couple of shovels. They were gone for maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like eternity. Inside, I tried explaining to my mom and the other women what had happened, and gossip started. My aunt started stirring things up and smirked and told the kids that it was La Llorona and her husband, and that freaked me and my younger cousin out. Mom and my other aunt shut her down, saying that she was being ridiculous. And then the men came back and nothing, and they'd check again in the morning. Nothing was stolen, no cars, no tools, no chickens. We all just decided to stay up, and there was no way anyone was sleeping after all of that. Coffee and bread went around as we sat together, just throwing out theories. Thieves, spies, La Llorona, stalkers, even skinwalkers came up. At sunrise, the whole family went outside to check things over. There was blood right outside my window, and my uncle had missed it in the dark, and my mom was audibly worried. The rest of the day passed without incident, and we stayed for a few nights, but my uncle, cousin, and dad took turns standing guard. On our last night there, someone brought a newspaper from the nearest larger town over, and it warned country folk about these roving bands of hyper-poor people breaking into barns and farmhouses, killing the owners and stealing whatever they could carry before disappearing back into the hills. A dozen people had already been killed, apparently. Only one survivor, a farmhand who managed to shoot an intruder and drag himself to town, had lived long enough to tell what had happened, and the town's terrible doctor unfortunately couldn't save him. And my dad's face was grim. That's who they were, he said. Years later, I asked what he had told my uncle that night, and his answer chilled me. I told him I saw gitanos, and my uncle instantly knew what to do. I looked it up later, and I guess gitanos in English means gypsies.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Intruder. I'd been working for almost 12 hours straight, and by the time I got home, I was completely drained, both physically and mentally. As I walked into my bedroom, I could feel a wave of relief wash over me at the thought of finally being able to relax. However, just as I was about to lay down on my bed, my phone suddenly made a sharp notification sound, jolting me out of my tired stupor. Wondering what could be so urgent, I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my phone, squinting at the bright screen in the dimly lit room. Upon unlocking my phone, I noticed a message from an unknown number displayed on the screen. The message read, "Do you miss me? I wish you remember our first kiss." As I read the words, a chill ran down my spine. I felt a wave of unpleasant memories flood my memory. That evening, I had been waiting outside the bar for Casey, my girlfriend, for a few minutes. As I stood there, I felt a sudden touch on my back, which startled me. I turned around to see a girl in a green jacket smiling at me. She was quite beautiful, with long brown hair and sparkling brown eyes. However, something about her made me feel uneasy and creepy. Maybe it was the way she was staring at me with a hint of intensity. Her smile appeared to be a little too weird, and it seemed like she was trying too hard to make a positive impression. She asked me if I wanted to join her inside the bar, but I politely declined, and I told her that I was waiting for my girlfriend. Her smile faded, and her face contorted into an unpleasant expression before she walked inside the bar. A few minutes later, Casey arrived, and we headed inside the bar. We were having fun, enjoying each other's company, when I felt a sharp gaze on us. Casey noticed it too, and started to look around uncomfortably. I saw in the direction of the gaze and noticed the same girl sitting on the counter, staring at us. When she saw that we noticed her, she quickly looked away. As the night went on, I couldn't shake off the feeling that she was still watching us. Finally, I asked Casey if she wanted to go to my place, and she agreed. While driving, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror as I felt like someone was following us. But every time I looked, there was no one there. As soon as we arrived at my apartment, I felt a sense of unease. I scanned the surroundings, looking for any sign of danger. Even though I couldn't spot anyone suspicious, I still had a nagging feeling that someone was watching us. Not wanting to take any chances, I turned to Casey and asked her to stay close to me as we walked inside. After locking the door behind us, we made our way to the living room, where we settled on the couch. We spent some time scrolling through the movie options until we finally settled on a romantic flick. As the movie progressed, we grew more comfortable with each other's presence, and the room was filled with the sound of laughter and whispered comments. Eventually, we found ourselves wrapped in each other's arms, our lips meeting in a passionate kiss. We made love for what felt like hours, our bodies intertwined in a frenzy of desire. Finally, exhausted yet content, we fell asleep in each other's arms, and the warmth of our love still lingering in our bodies. I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling a light touch on my hair. My first thought was that it must be Casey, my girlfriend, trying to wake me up. Without opening my eyes, I reached out and grabbed the hand, but when I finally opened my eyes, I was shocked to see the girl who had been outside the bar earlier that night standing at the edge of my bed. My heart started racing as I tried to make sense of what was happening. How had she got into my apartment? Why was she touching my hair? I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that we were not alone in the room. I considered getting up and confronting the intruder, but my body was paralyzed with shock and fear. Suddenly, she leaned in and kissed me, and I was too stunned to react. It wasn't until I regained my senses that I pushed her away. The commotion caused Casey to waken. She was shocked to see a stranger in her house and demanded to know who she was. As I told her I didn't know her, the girl grabbed the table lamp and lunged at Casey, but before she could do anything, I grabbed her. As I prevented her from doing anything, I instructed Casey to call 911. Casey frantically dialed 911. Her fingers shaking with fear, she recounted the events of the last few minutes to the operator. After what felt like an eternity, the sound of sirens pierced through the silence of the apartment. The police arrived, their presence providing us with a sense of relief and safety. As the officers escorted the strange, creepy girl outside, her eyes locked onto mine with a piercing intensity that left me feeling uneasy. Though she was being taken away, her stare seemed to bore into me, sending shivers down my spine and leaving me with an uneasy feeling. I'm relieved to say that I never laid eyes on that girl again after that terrible experience. She gave me such an uneasy feeling that stuck with me for a while. I remembered hoping that I would never have to cross paths with her again. The thought of encountering her once more made me feel anxious and on edge. However, as time went on, I gradually forgot about her and moved on from the experience until today, when I received this message.
The notification bell slightly distracted me from the overpowering pain I was feeling in my lower lady part, which was only getting severe for the past few days. I grabbed my phone and checked the message, hoping not to be him. And luckily, it wasn't. I didn't realize it had been so long. It was Nicholas, my childhood friend who suddenly went off to college one day and never contacted me again. He had sent me the pictures of Shadow and Willow. Damn, I had missed those two fur babies. Well, I miss my friend too, but not as much as these cats. What a surprise! I didn't expect a message from you. My reply was sent within a few minutes. I couldn't hide my excitement since he was one of my few friends I had stayed in high school. Well, if I were to look at it that way, he was the only one who stayed through kindergarten to high school. So, are you in Barcelona? For real? He was typing something, but before he could finish and send it, I texted again. He responded with yes while saying that he was here to stay this time. I told him the truth, that I hadn't visited his home after a few visits 5 years ago when I was not engaged, and how much I missed playing with the two softballs. He said I could visit if I wanted, but that felt awkward considering I never visited them. What if his mom thinks I was there to seduce his son, just like the women in Sebastian's family kept saying whenever I engaged greetings with any man? But his positive response put my mind at ease, and I agreed to the visit. Talking with him brought back all the things that I had missed ever since I got engaged. But now I was fed up with all of this. All my life, I had been in nothing but pain. My parents ignored my whimpers since the only thing on their minds was how to expand their business, and how to overflow their already filled pockets. I clearly remember the age when I had been violated by none other than my uncle by blood. It was at the age of 5, and I couldn't even understand what in the world was happening to me. All I could feel was the pain that was caused by his fingers. I still don't understand if I should cry over the malice that was directed at me or feel lucky that her wife entered the room and rushed toward me to save my life from his monstrous husband. By the way, she divorced him in the following month. After that, I started to avoid him whenever he visited our house. And even though I couldn't understand why my mother asked me to keep my mouth shut when I told her about this, now I know the real reason. It was because he was one of the major shareholders in their company. The day I realized that the sick man didn't only harass me, but also assaulted his daughter, who constantly compared to me, was when she jumped down on my throat outside the school and roughed me up. As I was wailing on my own, hesitating to enter the school, I saw a boy staring in my direction. and then he started walking toward me. "Are you okay?" He stuttered those words, but for some reason, I started to bawl even louder. I was so embarrassed and scared that someone saw me in this state. If Mom found out, she would scold me. So I ran away. Mom did scold me when I reached home, thinking I picked a fight in school, and I didn't correct her either. After doing me up a little bit, she informed me that she was going to visit one of her new friends who was also an investor in the company, so I was supposed to get along with her children. The moment I walked into that home, my eyes met with the same kid from earlier, and I backed away a bit, fearing he would tell my mom about me crying. "I'm Nicholas." I was surprised to see him smiling as he introduced himself to me, as if he had met me for the first time. Thinking he might not remember our previous encounter, I smiled back and introduced myself. And as I was doing this, I did notice him stuttering for a few seconds before gaining composure. It felt good playing with him, till Mom chatted with her friend. Finally, I had a friend of my own. The two of us started to grow closer as friends, since he also went to the same school as me. The day when our school asked if we wanted to enroll in the martial arts and self-defense class, I was the first one to raise my hand. From that day on, I started working hard on making myself stronger so that no one could ever harass me. I was in my 3rd year of middle school when I first saw Sebastian, who was visiting with his father, who was to discuss something with my dad, and I immediately developed a one-sided crush on him. As time passed, my feelings for him remained the same, and the day I first heard about my engagement talk with him, I fell over the moon. And judging by the way he was looking at me with excitement in his eyes, Sebastian felt the same about me. After the graduation, I overheard Mom telling Nicholas's mom about my engagement date getting fixed, and since it was my first time hearing about it, I got embarrassed with all the same excitement as well. I got occupied with all the engagement shopping and preparation that I didn't realize Nicholas left for college until the day I visited his home with my mother to give him an invitation to the party. Just a month after the engagement, everything started to change. Sebastian started to get annoyed with me being friendly to any male, whether it was his father, cousin, or anyone. Annoyance evolved into a rage as he started screaming whenever any guy approached, whether it was my fault or not. The last time I went to visit Nicholas's mom and their cats, he called me asking where I was, and when I told him, he simply said he was on his way to pick me up. As I exited the house and approached him, something hard fell across my face, bruising my cheeks. My head turned to the side, and my eyes met with Nicholas's mother before tears filled in them. I didn't say anything, and silently got in the car. I don't know what Sebastian said to my mom that she somehow managed to convince Nicholas's mother to keep her mouth shut, but I didn't care, because I had already decided never to go there. That slap was nothing in comparison to what he started to do next. At first, I resisted him and used my skills on him to avoid his heinous actions, but he got my parents involved while threatening their partnership, so my parents asked me to stop fighting against him. I still remember my mom's words. "Oh, I had put up with your father all your life, so why can't you? You're going to be his wife anyway, so why not start getting used to it beforehand?" After putting up with it for almost 6 years now, I think it was finally enough, and I was not going to take it anymore. I had been almost a month now since my so-called fiancé Sebastian made his forceful attempt at lovemaking, yet again, and even though I did break his nose, I couldn't save myself from the pain that followed when he broke the wine bottle on that sensitive part between my legs. I couldn't handle the pain and started to lose consciousness. But over the last few years of dealing with such behaviors of his, I had learned to fight that. As he was turning away from me while leaving me in such a state, I grabbed another wine bottle, limped toward him, and broke it on his head, which immediately made him lose consciousness. I took a deep sigh, all the while resisting the feeling of numbness taking over my brain and dragging myself out to his apartment, only to collapse while going down the stairs. I was taken to the emergency room by some residents of that apartment building and got immediate treatment. The wounds were not enough to cut the part too deep, but still, the bleeding wasn't stopping for about an hour or so, and when it finally did, the doctors stitched them. After getting discharged from the hospital, I locked myself in the room, refusing to see any of my parents or Sebastian. I knew if I were to say that I did not want to marry that monster, they would still keep forcing me. So I decided to run away as soon as I got recovery. Even though my visible wounds were healing, the pain just doesn't go away, and the nightmares just won't stop where all these people force me to do things against my will. That was when I received Nicholas's text and we decided to meet. I told him a few things about not wanting to marry Sebastian, but I never told him the reason, because I knew how he was even in school. When someone even just touched me, he would just throw insults at them, so much till they never even come closer to me. He was more like an overprotective brother to me. The next day when I entered his house, I realized no one was there besides him, so the two of us were alone. I also realized how much he had changed from that almost nerdy cute kid who always had the anger on the tip of his nose to this handsome, cheerful man who was giving off a bad boy vibe. We talked for a few moments. Then he told me to head to his room till he was bringing a drink for us. After entering his room, I realized not many things had changed. That was when my gaze went to the novel I lost in the first year of high school. I picked it up and started going through pages, when I found a withered lily inside those pages. I remember giving this to him when we entered high school together, but I never realized he was still keeping it. That was when it hit me. Did he like me? I turned my head to the door, only to find him staring at me with a slightly pleased smile that seemed barely visible. For some reason, my heart started thumping with the realization of his feelings for me. He handed the juice gently, and then he opened the beer can that he brought for himself. I was feeling so hot that I gulped the juice in a single breath, and as the last sip was finished, my head started to feel heavy. As I tried to look in the direction of the man standing in front of me, my vision started to get distorted. Since I had grown a little resistant to the drugs and the pain, I was able to fight it in my brain. I felt someone grabbing me and putting me somewhere. Then someone whispered something in my ear that I couldn't understand. But all of this was too terrifying to me, which intensified with the feeling of someone between my legs as a body pushed against mine, triggering back the pain caused by Sebastian. My uncle, Sebastian, and everyone who had mistreated me started to flash in front of my eyes, making my blood curdle. I tried harder to fight the effects of the drugs and was finally able to get through. As I opened my eyes and I looked at the man over me, I couldn't help but see Sebastian's face. All the pain, all the suffering he had caused started to resurface. I immediately grabbed him by his throat and flipped him over, my hands still strangling his neck. Before I could realize the man wasn't my fiancé, it was too late. His breathing had already become too faint for him to get through this. I felt nothing as I saw his last breath leaving his body. No guilt, no sadness, or happiness of killing the man who was exploiting my body. I simply just sat there, staring at his lifeless body with a blank expression. I don't know how many hours passed when I heard someone screaming and calling 911 over me. My senses were still disoriented. I could not feel anything at that point. A few moments later to the call, I saw someone putting cuffs over my hands and taking me with them. While walking outside the house, I saw Mom and Dad's car stopping in front of the house, and their timorous faces and voices were seen and heard by everyone. My lips formed a smile on their own as they saw me, and their expression change in a rather scared tiff. This smile on my lips was telling them, "Now, you won't be able to force me to marry that weasel."